So, since the last time we spoke, a lot has happened.
Yeah.
So, Donald Trump, huh?
So,
How do you feel about cursing on this podcast?
So I know that I've had strong feelings about Trump for a long time, but
Yeah.
Josh, surprisingly, big fan. He's
Shut up.
always make America great again. And I asked, like, what does that mean? What does make America great again mean to you? And he said, America was the best before 1865, before all these rights. He's gonna dunk your entire image.
That entire clip is just gonna ruin me.
No, obviously we're both not big fans.
No, not a big fan. It's interesting. I think. I was actually just thinking about this the other day about how, because I remember I was living in the States when Trump was elected the first time.
Right.
And there was, of course, this sentiment of terror and fear from a lot of people. And I think what ended up happening at the end of those 4 years was that for the most part, everything just kind of kept moving on.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people kind of, I guess the climate in the States wasn't as bad the first time as it now feels this time.
Yeah.
And I think the key difference is that when Trump was in office, he didn't control all three branches of the government. And now all three branches of the government are essentially aligned with exactly what he wants.
Yeah.
So I think the sense of dread or maybe what's going to happen is a little bit more profound this time around, because at least I do, because at least with the first time there was at least the coping mechanism of, well, we don't really know, everything was speculative, everything was,
he's just saying a bunch of shit.
We can speculate on what's going to happen, we can think this is going to happen, but this isn't actually going to happen or whatever. But now we have a sample size plus the added benefit of almost a decade. Benefit's the wrong word to use, but the added almost a decade of dealing with Trump campaigning and being president. Now you have a little bit clearer of a picture of what the end game is and the means to do so.
Yeah.
That it makes things seem a little bit more heavy this time around. I think that's the change in the climate in the States especially is more polarizing, because the people who love him more than they did 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And the people who hate him more than they did 8 years ago. So it's like the gap has only grown bigger. And that leads to a bit more dread in the climate in the States, and almost a feeling of, you can disagree with me, but almost a feeling of like a cold civil war that's brewing.
Oh,
in
it's
the
been
sense
going
that
on
it's
since
like,
the first term that he had.
Yeah.
This like whole thing of like, it's so, I mean, obviously, so before we had Obama, and Obama was divisive, but not to
he did
this
wear
degree.
a tan suit once.
Yeah, he wore a tan suit one
that
time, and
caused
that
a lot of
that caused
controversy.
an uproar. But now we have like, so we have the second term of Trump, and not only do we have a clearer idea of who he is as a leader, he's also, 8 years older than when he first started campaigning.
Yep.
He's clearly lost his mind. Like he's losing it completely. He has his entire cabinet are people that wrote the Project 2025 manifesto, and they want all of that to come true, and they're guiding him through all of this. He's saying things that he never has ever said that he believed in, but now that he has these people backing him, he's only saying what they want him to say.
Right.
It's terrifying. And on a personal level, obviously, for people in the States, there are things like that hit home closer that are like women's rights, tax breaks for billionaires that are just going to continue, obviously, and no help for the lower or non-existent middle class. But then now, living here, the number one thing that I'm worried about is he said at least 6 months ago that he can't stand NATO and he wants to pull America out of NATO. And we live next door to one of our biggest enemies, the world's biggest enemies, because they're terrible. I'll say it on camera. We live next door to Russia, and if he pulls USA out of NATO, NATO is weakened by half. And then we are living, 500 kilometers or 1,000 kilometers from the world's enemy.
Right.
So what are we going to do with that? Like, I don't Like it's really, really difficult to think about
Yeah.
like what's going to happen if he makes true on his claims.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know,
I'm glad we started out here.
no.
Yeah, I am really glad that we really kicked it off hard.
Yeah,
Like,
I know, right?
It's I think the last podcast we did was more
It
like
was a slow build, right?
yeah, it was like it's like street style skating where you kind of like build up the speed to start doing the tricks. This is more like vert style skating for all you people who play Tony Hawk Pro Skater. We just sent it right down.
You know what? I've been following the elections and stuff for quite a while, and you know what? Controversially, well, not really anymore since he freaking won the majority, right? I'm actually a lot more optimistic than I thought I would be in terms of America. The choice between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. Yes, of course, I'm looking more from a geopolitical standpoint.
Of course, yeah.
In terms of, can I imagine Kamala Harris sitting in front of Putin and telling him no? I don't think so.
I could.
I don't know. She could. She had her chance to kind of prove her mettle, right? To go and talk to a lot more people who maybe disagree with her and show some of that fierceness. But I think what a lot of Americans saw is that she cherry picked a lot of the people that she was talking to. And she mostly spoke to people who were already fans. And
Yes.
A lot of people hated some of Biden's policies.
Of course.
And she didn't go out of her way to differentiate herself from that in any way.
She didn't do that at all. And she also, she didn't... I know that there was policy out there that she put out what her policy was going to be moving forward. It was never communicated to people outside of writing. It was a lot of lip service, as you said, to the people that were already fans. And she didn't really I don't know, she didn't build or she didn't try to pull in anyone else. It was all, he's the enemy, blah, blah, blah. Like the Democratic Party in general has been so mismanaged for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
We fucked over Bernie Sanders, who would have easily beaten Trump
He was the
first
guy.
time.
He was your guy's guy.
He was my guy.
That still hurts me to the bone. Yeah.
As much as I argue against old people being in the presidency, I would take him at 90 years old over the three choices we've had in the past 5 years.
Yeah.
Well, I would say I agree with what you guys. The sentiment you guys are saying is that I think the biggest problem was that Kamala as a candidate was hard to get excited about for a lot of people. And I'm not talking about myself personally or whatever, because it doesn't really matter at this point. But I mean, in general, it's hard. The campaign didn't really excite anybody. The whole campaign platform was essentially vote for me because I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not this, I'm not that.
Even
not
more so
because
than the
of
last time,
not
which is
because of I am this or I am that. It was more like because I'm not this or I'm not that.
Yeah.
And I think whether or not someone agrees with Trump or hates Trump, you can't argue the fact that the people who voted for him were excited about him.
Yeah.
Now we can spend all day talking about how that kind of thing to be excited about is wrong or morally whatever.
Yeah.
We can spend all day talking about that, but
echo chamber.
that's not the point. It's not going to change anything. The fact of the matter is, he built a campaign that excited a follower base that got him ready to go. And it was the same thing we saw in 2016 with Hillary. Her entire platform was, at least I'm not Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And we saw how that ended. And when Biden ran in 2020, his campaign was completely different. It was built on a platform that people understood because he had done it for 8 years with Obama. They understood that it was going to be at least somewhat a continuation of Obama's ideology or the ticket that they both ran on together for 8 years. So there was that kind of idea of at least we know what Biden stands for, or at least Biden wants to do, so that people could get behind it. And then what did the Democrats do? They just ran it back from 2016 with Kamala, same campaign, different face, and did the exact same campaign that Hillary ran, which didn't work in 2016 and it didn't work in 2024.
But it earned money. It paid a lot of people, but nobody came out with the positive win. Like she paid out what, like $1 million to Oprah. She paid out millions to people to show up at her rallies. It didn't turn anyone. Everyone knows that Beyonce is always going to be on your side. Oprah is always going to be on your side, especially if you pay them $1 million to show up at your rallies.
This is something I'm going to stop this here for a second. I just saw the same talking point from Joe Rogan a few days ago where he got fact checked by Jamie and it proved it wasn't true. So a lot of the rhetoric of how much money she spent towards celebrities turned out to not be true. We don't have a fact checker here, but fair enough. I will say to put on camera that I've seen the same talking point on the Joe Rogan podcast where he was making the same point about a lot of people being. What I witnessed was Jamie fact checking it and finding out it wasn't true.
I watched that. I watched that thing as well. But I will say, money did go to Oprah's.
Yes, I think it was the Beyonce, the one that wasn't true.
The Beyonce one wasn't true.
Oprah, if I'm. Again, I don't want to make any statements that we can't fact check at the moment because we don't have a producer.
Yeah, of course.
But I think the Oprah one might be true, but the Beyonce one, I'm almost certain
the Beyonce
wasn't
one
true.
is. I don't think that's. I'll tell you guys why I low-key I laughed my head off. Simply because you go from Bernie Sanders, who was all about the people. He was listening to the workers. He was
has been since the 80s or
he has been, and whether you like his policies or not, or whatever the case is, he had a grassroots. He had a lot of people supporting him. When it came to Kamala Harris and the campaign that they ran, she stood for everything that so many people hate nowadays. No one gives a fuck about what celebrity endorses you anymore.
Yeah,
who Beyonce, she's fine whether Donald Trump wins or whether Kamala wins.
Yes.
She's good. She's flowing in cash. Yeah. We've got the Swifties. Get out of here. No one, bro, unless you talk about stuff that people actually care about, no one's going to care. And, I watched Donald Trump's interviews, most of his interviews that he did. And you know what was interesting is you'll be surprised how much people vote for someone who's just honest with what they say, whether it's crazy or not, or whether they come across as likable. Kamala Harris, she had so much potential to really be like genuine and whatever, but she came across like a robot. And when Donald Trump was out there kind of cracking jokes and whatever, I was just like, bro.
It's just a massive failure on the part of the Democrats to not. First of all, they tried to appease a lot of the right and tried to pull a lot of the right over with a lot of their ads were like, well, I own a gun too, like that kind of thing. And you're not gonna win over people with that. It seems so fake.
I remember that the Kamala Harris campaign where she's like, "By the way, I own a Smith and Wesson 1911." I was like, "Cool,
all right, cool." But what are you gonna do for me? Like, what are you gonna do for the country? And you're right when we say Bernie Sanders didn't have like these massive like Beyonces or Tom Hanks or whoever coming out for them. He had, I think...
He did go on Joe Rogan.
He did go on Joe Rogan, and she refused to do that, which is a crazy move. She should have done that. But he had Killer Mike. I think Killer Mike was the only person that he, like, interviewed with that was a celebrity.
Yeah.
And nobody cared about that except for the people. The people cared about it because he cares about the people. And we just don't have that person in that party at all.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue, and you touched on this earlier... I think the biggest thing was that Trump's campaign was all about, to break it down, was you're worried about groceries, you're worried about gas, you're worried about rent, you're worried about all of these things. Here's my solution to those. Now, I don't agree with his solution to those things. I don't think that his solution is going to work. That's my personal understanding of the data that I've read and my personal feeling on things. But it doesn't matter. He's already won. But the thing is, at least his campaign said, here's what you're worried about. Here's how I'm going to address it.
Yep.
I don't think at any point I ever saw the Harris campaign saying, here's how I want to address the cost of living, the cost of just existing
She
as
was
an
all
American.
about joy.
Right. And so I think that was the biggest problem. You know, I did vote for Kamala in the end, but it wasn't an enthusiastic vote.
No.
But like the thing is, when you're looking at it in hindsight, at least the Trump campaign did say, this is what you want and this is how I'm going to fix it. Whether or not you think his solutions are going to work or make things worse is a totally different topic. At least the campaign addressed it, which is something that the Democratic campaign hasn't done for the better part of a decade. They've not ever acknowledged that these issues exist.
I totally agree with you. But what would you guys do? Let's say 4 years goes by. Is that my fault?
That's my.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. 4 years goes by, and turns out that there's less. The road to World War III has been cut short. America's doing a lot better. People are happier. America looks, because one of my issues with Biden's administration is how weak America looked to the powers around it.
Yeah.
I just the fact that Iran felt free to shoot 300 ballistic missiles at America's closest ally in the Middle East.
Yeah.
That is insane to me. Like,
Crazy.
that is insane that America stood by. Where I was watching that shit live. America stood by and watched that happen. I was like, holy shit. Russia just like, Ukraine, I think we're gonna take that, right? They threaten nuclear war all the time, and and they're like, oh, if you do this, we're going to escalate. Then they bring in North Korean troops to fight Ukraine. Like, bro, I was like, America, what is going on? And so that's why I'm kind of like, rather someone, people sometimes they don't care about their leader being nice. They're like, tell me your leader is actually brave. And case in point, when he got shot.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I'm not convinced he actually got shot. His ear was healed like the next day, but that's the conspiracy theorist part of me.
Yeah. No. I mean, I watched a ton of things about people who professionals who shoot guns and whatever, kind of explaining the whole thing.
Yeah.
But for a lot of people, even people who are against Trump, they saw him stand up and throw his fist in the air, and that they were like, "That's the American spirit."
Sure.
That's the, and it's kind of hard to
really hate to say it, but it's so
No, I
true.
get what you're
Yeah.
saying. I do think that there has been some damning things though in the month plus since, or the almost month since the election. And one of those that really bothers me is, his whole platform that he ran on with Russia was, I'm going to have the Ukrainian war solved even before I
24
take
hours.
office, within 24 hours. Within the first few days of him getting the election or securing the election, he claimed that he had made a phone call to Putin and that Putin was open to talks and all this stuff. Less than 24 hours after that, the Kremlin came out and said that didn't fucking happen. So it was immediately denied by Putin's camp in the Kremlin. So it's like, that made Trump look like a little bitch almost immediately. He came forward and said, I'm going to solve this. I made a phone call. This is the phone call. Putin said he's going to talk. And immediately the Kremlin and Putin's camp said that never happened. And they were willing to say no. So it's like, okay, if you want to act this tough game and you want to act like you can put Putin in his place, then why did you allow him to just bitch slap you in front of everybody? And it's been radio silence since then. So,
also,
I mean, essentially, Trump kind of tried to be like a big dick in a locker room, pardon the crass terminology. But when he tried to do so, when it came time, when push came to shove, the Kremlin basically said, no, you didn't. And there's been nothing from Trump's camp since then. So I
haven't looked at that story at all.
Yeah, it's been like almost like Trump tried to say, hey, look at what I did. And he got right to the face by the Kremlin.
Yeah.
And
sorry.
it's like, well, holy shit.
Well, on top of that, the Kremlin and Putin have been very pro-Trump because they know that he is clearly easy to manipulate. They're
That is
going
my
to be
fear.
able to manipulate him so easily by they just say they put out one briefing that says Trump is a very strong leader. He will be all over them. He loves them so much. And for the past year even, I've seen not just reports, but interviews with people that are at Trump rallies that are praising Putin for being a strong leader, and then also saying that if Trump needs to be a dictator, he should be, because that's what this country needs. People that 2 years ago, if you said, do we need a dictator in the USA, they said, no, this is America. We stand for freedom. We don't need dictatorships. Those same people, because Trump says certain things, they're like, yeah, we need a dictator to lead the country because it's him.
I think that's I think that's the dangerous slope that I've seen as well is that I do have to push back a little bit on the sentiment that you mentioned in the beginning that Trump will bring a stronger presence to Putin. I have a hard time believing it when I look at the 8 years in the past of the rhetoric in the USA used to be that we are just philosophically opposed to the East in that way, into Russia, into the way of leadership. And now you've seen the Republican Party and the Republican people go from being philosophically opposed to the way that Putin leads Russia to now being almost fully supportive of it, if not afraid of it. And that has come directly from Trump's rhetoric of how he has led the Republican Party. And it almost makes me a little bit afraid that instead of being a strong leader against Putin, Trump has just been allowing himself to be manipulated by Putin for the past 8 years.
Oh, clearly.
And
I get the sentiment, and I think that's a criticism people levy rightfully at Trump, is the fact that he seems easily glazed, like people can glaze him quite well.
Yeah.
Having said that, his actions, regardless of what he said, saying Putin's a nice dude or whatever the case is, his actions when he was in office always, like, they didn't bolster Russia. Like, for example, he's the one who went crazy at Germany to stop buying oil from Russia, to stop buying gas from Russia. He's the one who wanted to, I forgot what that pipeline is called. He was like, bro, don't do it if you don't want to give Russia that power over you. And what happened? Yeah, now Germany and they are suffering quite a lot now because there's sanctions against Russia and whatever the case is.
Oh, okay,
So it seems like the same thing with like Iran, and like it seems like he will say something like, oh yeah, that guy's a cool guy or whatever, but then the actions that he'll place against, like the sanctions that he put against Iran, meant that Iran couldn't sell tons of oil. I mean, Russia didn't attack Ukraine under Donald Trump. So I think people are kind of like, I just as an outsider looking in, I feel like people are like, yeah, I might not like what he says all the time, and but what did he do? I think that's where some people are.
Okay.
I think at the risk of this just becoming a Donald Trump podcast,
Which I don't want to happen.
I can just say that in this presidency, it's the first time he controls, going into it, all three aspects of the government. So his whole point of make America great again, he no longer has an excuse if it's not.
Yeah, true.
So at this point, whatever it is,
make it the first time.
Whatever it is moving forward, going into Biden's presidency, he was always able to blame certain things on Biden's presidency or the Democrats holding him back from doing what he wanted to do properly. Now he has all the keys to the kingdom. It's either sink or swim for him. And I think that there's not much else that can be said at this point other than speculation, because it's just like he's either going to make America great again, like he's been promising for 8 years, or it's going to fail, and there's no one else he can blame for it.
Exactly.
Because now
I agree with you fully.
He has the tools he needs to do what he needs to do or wants to do.
Yeah.
And it's either, okay, prove it, or
you were just full of shit.
Or you were just full of shit.
I think for me, I know some people want him to fail simply because they hate him.
Sure.
Or whatever the case is. I'm just hoping, I'm like, I hope some of the shit he's been talking about when it comes to illegal immigration and like some of the gangs that have been popping up, like the fentanyl crisis, the okay, inflation's down again, or like for the sake of all of us, I hope it works out. And when it comes to NATO, I think he physically cannot just unilaterally withdraw from NATO. I think it needs to be put by vote.
Probably maybe a 2/3. It may be a 2/3 situation. I'm not
and
sure.
also and also
supermajority
yeah.
thing. But
and also, I personally think that I think that NATO has relied too much on the US. I think that we shouldn't be like bitches to America. Like we should be able to be like, yeah, we can ourselves stop Russia or whatever the case is. I think his argument was that the deal that was signed was that each NATO country needs to increase their budget for military spending by, it needs to be about 2% of their GDP.
Okay.
And a lot of European countries were just not doing that. And only after Ukraine got attacked, like Poland was just like, yo, let's put that up to 3%.
Yeah.
And like the ones
But
closest.
also,
So
meanwhile, you had countries like Estonia and the Baltic states that were always meeting or exceeding their expectations.
yeah, because they were right next to Russia.
Yes.
Same. Yeah. I mean, but yeah, I think
Yes,
not much else we
I
can
hope.
say about Trump. I guess
Yeah,
at this point.
I
yeah.
guess I'll end the Trump conversation was I also, as an American, and having family and friends that live there, I do desperately hope that he can make America better. We're not gonna say great again. Well, that's just a weird fucking statement. But make America comfortable again. Make America be the superpower and represent the superpower that it is. But I doubt that it's going to happen. I would love for it to happen. I doubt that he's going to be the person that does that. Based on his rhetoric, based on his policies, based on the people he has surrounding him, I don't believe in it, but I hope that he does.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, and it's completely fair. Have you guys gone back home to visit?
Yeah, we were
recently?
both back last year.
Yeah. Last November.
Not
Was the last
since we
time
talked to you. We've been.
Did
here
you get
the
your
whole time.
MAGA cap?
I was gifted a MAGA mug actually.
He was
for my,
gifted a MAGA
my
mug.
birthday was November 6th, and it was conveniently the day after the election, on November 5th. And a friend of mine as a birthday gift
With
had
a fucking picture of Donald
beautifully
Trump
gifted
raising
me
the
with
fist
a Donald Trump fist in the air.
on a mug. Yeah, so he drinks his coffee out of that now.
Which is also funny
That is
because
hilarious.
about 5 or 6 years ago, someone had gifted me a mug of Putin.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
And so now
Well, no, you have the Bernie Sanders mug. Too.
I also have a Bernie Sanders
Was it with
mug.
the jacket when he's?
No. It's like a cartoony picture of his face with like some flowers around it, and it says "President of my heart."
Yeah, I mean, Bernie Sanders. The thing, he was just too nice. Like he needed a little bit of. He believed that he could win by just being.
Reasonable.
a reasonable person. Yeah.
Not only that, like for example, in his debate with Joe Biden, instead of literally aggressively pointing out all the failings of Joe Biden and some of his old policies and all that sort of stuff, he was kind of like, it's as if he already accepted that he wasn't going to win.
Well, that was a problem with the the National Convention and the party itself fucked him over so hard. Because the writing was on the wall that even though he had the popular vote of Democrats in the country, he was not going to get the nomination.
Yeah.
They fucked him over in 2016.
Oh yeah, didn't they call it Bloody Tuesday or whatever when like Obama and all these people came out against they endorsed Joe
Hillary.
Biden. Oh, was it Hillary?
It was Hillary in
Oh, right.
2016.
yeah.
Yeah,
See, I'm
because
confused.
the way the
No,
DNC had worked, that so the DNC does like super delegates, which is essentially a scaled down version of the electoral college.
Okay.
And so they do it a little bit differently. The Republicans just kind of straight, in a simplified term, basically just do a popular vote.
Right.
And that's a gross oversimplification of things, but basically that's kind of how it works. With the DNC, they do like super delegates, and super delegates are kind of in a simplified term similar to electoral votes or states. And so basically, the popular vote had gone to Bernie, but the superdelegates all decided to send their votes to Hillary. And so it was basically like the people had said, we want Bernie, and the establishment said, fuck you, you don't know what you want. We're going to give you Hillary.
And at that time,
and that
people-
was essentially the nail in the coffin.
in the nationwide vote, the national vote for president, people that had voted for Trump said they easily would have voted for Bernie Sanders.
Oh, yeah.
But they were voting. It's always, well, not always, but in the past 3 elections, it's been, I'm voting against this person, not for this person. I didn't vote for Kamala. I didn't vote for Biden. I voted against Trump, and
Yeah.
I voted for.
I voted
did
against
vote for
Trump
that.
3 times.
But I think
But now we'll see if I was wrong. I don't know.
you know what? Like, I'll just quickly touch on this. Something I find it's refreshing because, like, I think you can't easily define people as left wing and right wing anymore. Of course, you've got the extremes. I can point at the right wing nut and the super left wing nut very easily.
Of course.
But most people are kind of lean more right wing on certain issues, more left wing on certain issues.
Sure.
As long as they can take care of their families and whatever. And it's just like, now I find it so interesting just watching American politics. Like, usually the Republicans would like lose the popular vote, right? And
Almost always.
and
Except for this time.
yeah,
Yeah,
and then a lot of the left wing or Democrats will seemingly have this moral foundation that they would speak from, like, hey, we actually got the vote of the people.
Yeah.
This time,
No chance. No chance.
It was
No, you've lost the country.
that
at
was
point.
something that I actually thought was funny.
Crazy.
I actually thought was a little bit humorous. Was that I had strapped in for a long night. I was actually like, I had my phone out and I was ready for a long evening and even a long week of finding out who won president, because I remember in 2020 it wasn't until several days after
After was
that
COVID
we
and
actually
everything
had
was voting,
certified
it was-
everything.
Yeah, so much more
But-
difficult. Yeah.
I was ready for a longer time. By maybe 1 a.m., I was like, this is done. Like, this is it. It was so
I know, it was-
clear how it went badly quickly, and it never went good for Kamala. Like, there was not a
straight up-
single moment ever in the entire process where it looked like she might be able to pull it out.
Yeah, I was
it
up
didn't
till-
even come close.
7 a.m. our time. I was up till 7 a.m. our time with some friends. Like, my wife and some friends, we all hung out and we watched the election. 7 a.m. and the whole time, just slowly, I'm slowly drinking and just getting more and more depressed. 4 or 5, 6 a.m.
Those
just
single
like,
whiskeys become doubles, and then they become triples.
fuck. And, like, under my breath the entire time, just fuck.
Yeah.
Fuck. That state too? Fuck.
no,
Yeah.
I think this was, for me, it was just, I feel like celebrity culture is dead.
You're not
and-
winning
and-
that war. Yeah.
Yeah, that for me, I felt like it was a stamp of like, listen, you need to reach the people.
Yes.
Don't be bringing out some.
Kid Rock. Bring Kid Rock out more.
Kid Rock and Hulk Hogan,
Kid Rock and Hulk
Tony
Hogan.
Hinchcliffe.
They're the voices of the people.
But on the other side too, Beyonce and Oprah
Well,
and
yeah.
all these people, like, you're just bringing out people that are
Although I
just
will say
saying the same thing that you knew they are. Like, you think Kid Rock was super progressive.
Yeah.
Bow with the Bow was super progressive.
my biggest regret though for this, me and you, we follow a lot of the same comedians and we listen to whether or not we agree with their politics. We do like a lot of their comedy and stuff like that. But Tony Hinchcliffe is big in like the comedy scene. A lot of the comedians that I listen to on podcasts know him or are familiar with him or whatever.
He's one of the roast goats.
One of the biggest losses I think in this election was that after he had done that, if Kamala had won, it would have been the most funny thing ever to just remind Tony Hinchcliffe for the rest of his career that he cost
yeah.
Donald Trump the presidency. It would have been his controversial set he did. It didn't affect anything, and it didn't affect anything. But if it had lost the Latina vote and had cost Trump the presidency,
Oh,
it
that
would have
would-
been the funniest thing.
That would have been.
in roast
so funny.
the roasts that would have come from the comedians.
But that's one thing I
Think
found.
of the Kill Tony episode right after that.
That would have been absolutely hilarious. But I didn't know who he is. This is one thing I found actually kind of annoying, but it is politics because I heard that little thing that he said and I was like, holy shit. That
Yeah.
But then I watched the whole thing and I went and watched some of the things that he says and it was like completely on brand.
Yeah,
Like,
Tony's always been that way.
like
Yeah.
it was people were like, oh, it's a racist dude. And then I was just like, oh, is there a lot of trash in
Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico? And but like there's like a trash problem and I was just like, okay, would I make that joke at that rally
About
when it
any
can be
city in Finland.
but I mean, it was just the way
Finland's
it
not
was
trash.
twisted.
Yeah.
The way it was twisted in mainstream media. I was just like, oh, come on, guys. Anyone can Google this shit and just
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I will say, as somebody who's listened to a lot of Kill Tony, the show he's done, he is a roast comedian. That's what he
Right.
does.
He
His-
also was written for the roasts for like 15 years.
yeah,
he is
like
a
the roast of
roast.
Tom Brady or the roast of
He is
Justin
Right.
Bieber or
like,
the roast of whatever
under,
he's.
Jeff, he is the roast goat.
Yeah,
He's
Right.
the best
that's what he does. So his whole entire brand has always been about roasting and roasting people.
with no limits, no
Right.
limits
And,
whatsoever.
So yeah, like when he came out and made these like insulting jokes towards different demographics and stuff, I think maybe that's when he was hired. Maybe he thought that's what he was hired to do because that's what he's
Yeah.
always done. So maybe
then-
there was a big miscommunication between the Trump camp and Tony
guess.
because maybe it was like they didn't. I don't know. Maybe they just saw, okay, here's Tony Hinchcliffe. We can hire
some
him. He's
comedian
whatever.
guy.
And then they didn't realize that his whole entire shtick is just being
It is
a roasting asshole. That's his whole thing. Like that's the point
it's
of what
hilarious
he does.
because they hired him, and then the next day, Fox News and the Trump campaign both came out and said, "We do not support these views." Blah blah blah. You hired Tony fucking Hinchcliffe.
yeah.
It's like
Wait a minute,
hiring Bill
actually.
Cosby post the scandal and being like, "Oh, it's going to be a women's convention and everyone's going to be safe." Like, what are you doing?
yeah. No. I mean, yeah. I battle to watch roast videos because in general, I feel so bad for the person being roasted.
I do, but I also fucking love it. So
Really?
much. I love roasts. Yeah, just because you know that everyone at the end of the day, everyone's doing it with the same goal in mind. Just be as funny as possible with no bars.
Yeah.
You can do and say whatever you want. Like I've seen people like, dead mom jokes, like someone whose mom just died, dead mom
That's
jokes,
crazy.
like just craziness. But then at the end they hug and they agree that we were just doing this as a battle. It's a roast battle, or it's a roast with the same goal in mind, and everyone knows that obviously I would never actually say this to you, but this is a format that we all agree is okay, and we're going to do it
Right.
together.
It
So,
might be
yeah.
kind of an American thing, though. Now that I think
It's
about it,
very much
I think a lot of like, for
Yeah.
example, like when it comes to humor, like British people, they always say that British humor is very dry. Finnish humor is very self-deprecating or whatever. But I
Finnish have humor.
hey, have you never seen?
My wife's uncle is very funny.
Already.
Shit, I'm having a hard time thinking of something that's Finnish and funny. But I'm sure. Hold on, give me in the next 30 minutes. I'll get back to it.
I'll stand up for Nico.
Yeah, Nico Kivala is hilarious. I don't understand any of his jokes. But hey, Ismo
I
Lekola's
don't
funny.
even know who that is.
I will say.
My wife's uncle is a stand-up comedian.
Yeah,
here in
he
Finland.
needs actually he needs the promotion right now. So
you
maybe
think
we
so?
should shout him out
I
on this
just know-
podcast.
Just finished
yeah.
a nationwide tour.
Yeah, he just did a nationwide
tour.
tour. Actually, there is some show like Luotomies is a really hilarious show on Yle that I think
Okay.
is
The Dudesons also reached America. That was
Oh,
funny.
the
Dudesons
Of course,
are funny,
You know,
yeah.
injuring yourself is always going to be funny, but
Yeah.
Ismo is a funny thing.
He's the
actually. I have
nonny
a-
guy, right?
Yeah.
I have a very funny like little side thing on this. Finns, whenever I bring up Ismo and like, oh yeah, I've enjoyed Ismo even before I moved here. 90% of them are like kind of like Ismo, he's not that funny, blah blah blah, whatever.
he's
But
very popular in USA.
the thing is,
Yeah, he is.
he is in USA. He moved to USA and he's making these jokes as a Finn commenting on USA culture.
Right.
So
Wonder what
Finns
kind of
aren't
person would do that.
understanding completely what he's talking about. But we as Americans are like, oh, it's funny to see that outside perspective. So that's why we enjoy him. I think, honestly, we enjoy him a lot more than
What kind of
most Finns do.
what kind of a dumbass motherfucker would move to another country and make an entire internet personality about being a foreigner in a country?
Yep, here we are. You know, I wasn't that wasn't my plan originally to start making content about living in Finland.
You came here for a different reason.
Yeah, and it was like
The weather.
yeah, totally. No, but because I only started making content like just a few 3 years ago. I don't know.
Oh yeah, brag about it. You're bigger than me, and I've been doing it longer.
No, man. No, but it's kind of like it's one of those things where I don't know. I'm still not quite sure what I think about what I do. I'm still like I enjoy it.
Yeah, sure.
Certain aspects of it, but there's something about being an influencer. There's certain things I'm like I don't want to think about it. I don't want to think about how many people viewed my video. I don't want to feel worse if I get less views or more views. Like that's an aspect of things that I'm just like.
That's a lot of ego though too. Like it's a lot of not egos and you have a big ego, but it's a lot of like your ego either takes a hit or it grows based on what you see. So like it is difficult to ride that line because even though, even with Josh's stuff, I keep track of, his views and likes and comments and interactions and whatever for the business, but also like it kind of helps me out too. I think I don't know what that is, but I don't know what that is mentally.
Do you feel good? Like
I feel better when I'm like, oh yeah, I knew this concept was going to be great, and I'm glad that people are appreciating it. Or when it goes the other way, and like I know this concept's fucking awesome, and
Am I wrong? No, it's you're wrong.
You're wrong. This whole culture is wrong. I'm moving back to USA.
Yeah. Well, I guess the original point I was bringing up was that like the humor thing. It really is difficult to nail down what cultures appreciate humor in what way, how, I mean, because we can always make jokes about Finnish people having no humor, but they have humor, but it's a very, very, very specific type of humor that maybe doesn't resonate with our background of humor.
And we're missing the language aspect of it, the growing up in the culture aspect of it. So there's a lot of things that we're missing that we might not even ever understand or not fully understand.
How's the language learning going?
Oh, brother.
How's that Duolingo streak?
154 days on that Duolingo streak.
Do you even know 154 words?
What was I going to say? Oh, yeah, about the language. How are you doing with the language?
Oh, man, it's rough. So I've talked about this, maybe not on like a public forum, but I've been here for almost 7 years, and my Finnish is still really rough, and I feel very embarrassed about that.
Same.
But the first 4 years or so that I lived here,
Yeah.
the first like 4 years or so that I lived here, it really was not a factor in my life. My work and my home life was to the point where English was so overwhelmingly dominant in my life in that situation. So I just simply did not. It's not that I didn't need Finnish. It's that it was English was required for everything in my life at that time. So at work, English was the only language we were allowed to speak at work. And so, because, I was working from home and my team was either in Mumbai or Costa Rica or USA or,
what were you doing?
I was doing like data analytics and that kind of stuff. So I was working in the tech industry, but so I was doing kind of like more tech work, things like that. So with the language, I just, outside of just ordering a burger at McDonald's, there was no need for me to have Finnish ever.
Yeah.
And we all know when you first move to Finland as a foreigner, the people you latch onto with friend groups are other foreigners. You don't immediately make Finnish friends as soon as you move to Finland. So, you're hanging out with your friends at the bar, you're speaking English. When I'm at work, I'm speaking English. I'm doing English in everything. So I spent 4 to 5 years of just nothing but English, and Finnish was actively discouraged in that 5 years. It was like,
Yeah.
with
It's
every
kinda
aspect of my
strange,
life.
right? Yeah.
So then when I entered a situation where I'm in now, where Finnish is much more necessary to me, I'm really much more interested in pursuing Finnish.
Right.
So for example, I always joke around that I speak like bartender Finnish. So like when I'm bartending, I work part-time as a bartender. When I'm bartending, I almost exclusively bartend in Finnish. Like usually I'm almost
Really?
completely in
Oh,
Finnish.
dude, then you know
But-
more than 150 words.
He does.
But
Yeah, you do very well with it.
I'm
yeah.
almost exclusively in Finnish. But again, the other joke is it's really easy to speak a language when you only have one topic to talk about.
Right.
It's true. You're doing the same interaction over and over. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes it trips you up too. Also, I mean, I also serve in Finnish sometimes too.
Yeah.
But then sometimes, somebody will say a word and I'm just like, I'm sorry, can we switch to English? Like I tried, but it's not going well.
Yeah. There's some moments where like for example, if someone comes in and they start asking me a really complex question like, "Oh, do you know where the hops are from in this particular beer?" And I'm like, "Okay, hold on, time out. I know the question. I understand what you're asking for, but I don't know how to reply to you in Finnish.
Right.
So can we just move this to something that's easier for both of us?" So usually if I have to break into English, it's because I understood the question, but I don't know how to give you the answer in Finnish. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think because, funny thing is, how you were saying you on wife learning,
Yeah.
where you put like
The stickers all over.
stickers.
Yeah.
I kind of delegated my girlfriend to help me with Finnish. She's done a terrible job.
I don't know who he's talking to.
There's a woman behind the wall.
The producer behind the screen.
Yeah, because it's so interesting because like hanging out with her family and stuff like that, like but her dad doesn't speak English very well, so she just sits down like around the corner laughing at myself and her dad trying to communicate because
It is interesting. Like my wife's dad, my wife's mom is speaks very good English, and her family speaks very good English. Her dad is a little rougher. I don't even know if it's rougher, but he doesn't feel as like confident. speaking English.
Yeah.
We've had conversations in English. It's a little bit broken, but he does well. But then her grandparents,
Not gonna happen.
like zero English whatsoever. And her grandfather sometimes will be like, well, if we're all together, he knows that I don't speak Finnish very well, and he'll
Right.
still try to say things to me in Finnish. I'm just
But that's very sweet.
Yeah.
no, obviously they're lovely people, and
Yeah.
I don't fault any of them for any of it, and everyone tries their best. It's great, but it is interesting to be like, Alisa, can you help me out here?
Have you noticed? I've noticed like this weird tension, right? Where I am pro speaking Finnish.
Mhm.
I'm pro people coming here and actively learning Finnish, and I stand up for the Finnish culture and all that sort of stuff. But I feel like a hypocrite because I myself cannot speak the language.
Yeah.
Well, you do live in Helsinki, which is a bit more of a friendly environment for people
Even
to not.
more. Like Tampere is
Um,
pretty friendly. Like we don't get a lot of assistance with speaking Finnish. Like everyone speaks English.
Yeah,
so
I mean, of
well.
course, us coming from, well, pardon me, Espoo, but let's be real. First and second biggest cities in Finland. Espoo erasure on this podcast. But I think, yeah, I mean, both cities are very international and very, very mixed culturally, and it's not unheard of to just be walking down the street or sitting on the tram or whatever and
Yeah.
hear English being spoken openly wherever you go in Tampere or in Helsinki. And so you kind of have a completely different mindset. But if you go somewhere, like for example, when I've visited places in Eastern Finland or in Northern Finland or even Central Finland, things like that are a little bit more rural, you start to see the kind of stark contrast of the language. And then I dive into like the caveman Finnish where I'm kind of saying like, me want beer there, like, It's just like Mina Haloat Olo Kiitos.
Yeah, whatever.
I can't get past the embarrassing, like, you know, when you're not so confident in a language,
Mm,
like, I feel really embarrassed trying to speak.
same, dude, always.
Like, I
Every
don't know
time.
how to get over that.
Dude, you're asking the
Honestly,
wrong people.
no,
We're
you're not.
doing the same thing, man.
Have you ever just tried not giving a shit?
Because I know that as soon as I stop trying, that they're gonna switch to perfect English, and I'm so embarrassed that I don't even have a second language. I speak 1.25 languages.
Mhm.
It's embarrassing for me to try.
You know, I actually this is we're gonna enter the hot take point of the podcast.
Oh,
this is,
yes.
This is where this
I'm
is
excited.
Twist.
Get twisted. No, this is the point where Josh is gonna get canceled because I have a genuinely like hot take about this, right?
Okay.
So I do recognize that, and we talked about this on the last episode we were together, that, you know, it's hard to learn the language and the expectation of learning the language. But one thing that I always get so frustrated with, right, is that as native English speakers, I understand that the world speaks our language. So
Yes.
it's a different perspective coming from where everybody speaks English and we don't speak their language. But I always
Yeah.
get so frustrated when I see online or in person when people get so offended when a native English speaker doesn't perfectly pronounce their language. Like if I mispronounce a Finnish word or I mispronounce a Finnish phrase, they will act as if they have either no idea what I'm talking about, or it's almost kind of like a joke that I can't say something perfectly. And it's like, if
Right.
I had said the same thing to you when you speak Raleigh English, it would be this huge
Oh my
controversy
God.
because I'm now making fun of you. Oh, I don't speak English natively. How could you ever have the balls
Yeah.
to make fun of the way I pronounce something? But
Oh,
the
I'm
moment
sorry,
I
I don't-
slip up in Finnish, it's all of a sudden it's totally fine.
I don't,
or it's totally
I don't
fine to
agree
just
with Josh. I would like to personally apologize to exactly the French
yeah, the French.
for this exact issue.
Well, yeah, I think I was talking about the French mostly.
Of course
but
you
I was-
were. Yeah, that's exactly
What about the French? Are you,
Oh, go there and try to speak French.
yeah. They.
Oh, go the fuck away. What the fuck are you trying to do with our language? Like, fuck off.
Oh, really?
Oh, they're terrible.
it is a
Except
funny
for you,
thing.
Carl.
Our
won't
friend
see
Carl
this.
is French. He's great. And our friend Kale, also content creator, Kale Bossanier. But
Right.
yeah, I've always found it very frustrating that there's almost no level of forgiveness when it comes to the learning process for native English speakers who try to learn a language,
Right.
because it's almost like we're expected to step into the shoes of that language and be perfect at it.
Yeah.
Because they're coming at it from a point of view of, well, I speak your language, why can't you speak mine? But it's like, yeah,
Well,
but I've never
our
pointed out
language-
any of your mistakes.
Our language, that's true.
I've never
Yeah.
pointed out. You think you're perfect at English, but that's
I'm
because I've
res-
never said anything
Because
to
I'm
you.
responding as if your grammar is correct. Your grammar is 90% of the time not correct.
Yeah.
And I would never speak that way, but I also understand that you're using this as a second language and you're doing it very well. I'm not going to
Yeah.
step on your shoes that way, but like, it's not like we go through school and Finnish is a language option.
Yeah, it's never an option.
Yeah.
Unless you live in like
Spanish,
Michigan.
German, and French, and we don't learn those even to a good degree.
Yeah.
There's not,
Yeah. Wait, are you talking about outside of Finland?
in USA.
Oh, in the USA.
In
I'm
USA.
talking about, yeah. I mean, really though, but any native, I've never seen any native English speaking country that teaches any major global language as well as other countries teach English.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
of course, I don't know the language
English
learning
is the
in,
language of
in
business.
South Africa,
Yeah.
but
It is. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It is such a weird. It's probably different in Helsinki
Yeah.
than because I haven't gotten anyone be upset at me for not speaking Finnish. I'm trying to think.
No, not in that way at all.
Yeah.
No, it's more the switching to English here. But
Yeah.
in other countries, there are the people that will
well,
get
in,
upset
in
that you're
Finland,
not
I
speaking.
have definitely received, like, in my comment sections or even. I'll
Do people get upset at
I'll
you
give one
sometimes?
perfect example is
Yeah.
the way that native English speakers pronounce certain consonants like K's or P's or T's. We aspirate them. So
Yeah.
we say ta, pa, ka.
Yeah.
We have an airy note to it. Finns don't have that. So when they say, for example, kiitos, they would say like a hard K sound.
Yeah.
There's no kiitos. It's
Yeah.
kiitos, like
yeah,
a hard
exactly.
K.
Yeah.
But if I say kiitos in a video, I'll get some comments of keto, like they write KH, and I'm like, hey, fuck you, dude. Okay, I want to hear you pronounce. Say the word cheerleader. Like, yeah. Okay.
And we're not coming to the conversation hating on these things.
Yeah.
Like, sure,
Yeah.
we make some jokes sometimes, but we don't ever come to Finnish people and be like, "Oh, shushi." We're gonna say shushi, or what is this shoe made out of?
Yeah, it's
No,
always
we don't come to that, but it's always in the comment section. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, this is how you say it so wrong. Forgive me, but this is my native language.
Yeah. Well, and on one hand, I can understand, for example, like in Finnish, the double consonants or the double vowels, not pronouncing them can change the whole meaning of the word,
Of
right?
course, yeah.
Right.
So, for example,
we
like
all-
saying like kula versus kula, it's a totally different word.
Mhm.
So if you don't say the double L, you're getting something completely different.
Yeah.
But the way I say the K does not change either one of those.
right.
If I'm saying kula versus kula, like
Yeah.
I'm still saying ka, ka, but that ka doesn't fucking change anything, Kari. I'm sorry. You know what I'm trying to say. You don't
think
need
you
to
mean-
comment on the way that I say it.
I think you mean kahari.
Yeah, sorry, Kari.
so since the last time we spoke,
Which was what, like May?
In the
Yeah.
summer, it would have been or early summer, late
It was like
spring.
May.
yeah, it was.
I think there was still snow on the ground last time. It was going into the.
Oh, it was going into summer.
I think it was, yeah.
So your experience of living here
Yeah.
and the politics of the country and whatever, has anything changed? Any different perspective? Any hot takes?
Well, we worked over the summer in the like a terrace, basically in the center.
Where are you going
in
with this?
Tampere. Sorry.
So where are you going with this?
Oh no.
He's spilling
Josh
some
and I-
tea. I'm
we
excited.
were both working at the same like stall in a restaurant in the center, so we were dealing a lot more with customer facing service.
right.
Josh had done a little bit of it over the past year, but it really ramped up over the summer. I mean, we
Yeah.
were doing it for 8 to 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
So a lot of that for me, especially because he had done it before, but I hadn't. Dealing with customers face to face, my finished level like skyrocketed.
Right.
It went from like, Moro, Mina, Olet, Keith to like I could converse back and forth and understand what they were saying to me. So understanding the language has gone much better. As far as integrating a full-time job now as opposed to, working for rental companies and things before, I'm kind of more integrated in that way. Nothing else has changed. You?
Man, no. I mean, it's been the same kind of. You said hot takes. It's been the same kind of issue of going from a professional full time job in a kind of a office setting to just entering the grind of not being able to find work at all. I think I just read on Reddit somewhere that it was something close to 12 or more % of people are unemployed in Finland now. The unemployment rate is
What?
absolutely
The highest in
skyrocketing.
EU. Yeah.
It's
No,
absolutely
really?
it is, yeah.
The highest in EU.
And well,
How? What?
the
I've seen
biggest
between 9
issue.
and 12%. Yeah.
I think the one thing I've noticed is that for myself in the job search, it's been exceptionally difficult as somebody who doesn't speak Finnish well enough. But I now am seeing highly educated Finnish friends of mine, or even highly qualified. Maybe they didn't go to school, but they have 10 or more years of experience in a certain field, who can't find jobs in that same field or whatever, because it's but those numbers are actually even predicted to be worse than what they appear, because the Yle projecting these numbers are not counting anybody who has, let's say if you have a job that gives you 5 hours a week, you're not counted as unemployed. You're counted as employed because you have a job.
If you have 5
So
hours
this-
a week, you are unemployed. It's
Well,
not. Yeah.
In practice, you're unemployed, but according to the government, you're not.
Right.
So this idea of only maybe, let's say 12 or 12.5% unemployment, it's probably closer to 25% of people who are underemployed or unemployed and are
That's
simply living off of.
strange.
So the climate's getting very, very scary. That's one of my hot takes that's been changing over the past year.
Yeah.
Is there's been rapid layoffs in the tech sector, especially, and there's not enough jobs to fill the need, and so people they're just not working, and they're you know, the need for these government assistant programs has just absolutely skyrocketed. Pardon me. It's made it more difficult to get that assistance because the people who are working in those industries are just absolutely inundated with paperwork. They don't have the time to catch up with it. So people are getting their benefits, their monthly benefits, maybe 2 weeks into the month, and by then their rent is already 2 weeks late. You know, it's this huge issue that has just exploded over the past year. And I'm not one to sit here and point the blame at anybody. I'm not pointing the finger at anybody, but the issue exists that's become extremely dire, in my opinion. Like you were saying, I believe it is the highest unemployment rate in the EU right now in Finland.
Really?
See, an adjacent hot take is because, you know, the reason these people are being laid off on, you know, they'll have like a week without work or without a project to work on, and then all of a sudden they're being laid off because they don't have anything to do.
A lot of gig workers.
Everything is too goddamn expensive. Everything is taxed to the gills, and the government is feeding off of these people that, with, you know, groceries, alcohol, tobacco. Employment is crazy. I didn't think that when you employ someone that it literally costs twice what they're being paid to employ them. That's true.
Crazy.
It costs twice what they're being. So you say you pay someone a decent salary, 20 euros an hour.
Nobody's making that.
It costs you, not in our service sector, no. But it costs you 40 euros an hour to pay them for the insurance, for the taxes, because you're being taxed as an employer to pay them, and then they're being taxed as an employee on their income.
Right.
It's fucking insane. It's too goddamn expensive. You can't keep people around if it's going to be that expensive to keep them working for you.
Right.
Well, this is something that
everyone suffers.
This is something I've personally dealt with, is that, like, you know, as a light entrepreneur in Finland, I'm someone who makes a certain amount of my income from social media and from entrepreneurship. But, you know, there's a huge issue amongst a lot of us content creators, especially. I'm not sure how much you've dealt with earning money through content creation. But,
a little bit here and there, yeah.
But like, let's say there's a limit of, let's say, 9,000 euros per year that you can make before you have to start paying a whole slew of taxes that you now have to pay.
And insurance. And
insurances and stuff like that. But these taxes are not proportional to the amount you're making. So let's say you make 11,000 on 1 year. You're going to pay almost the same amount of insurance or taxes proportionally as someone who's making maybe 20,000 from their thing. So it's almost like they expect you to go from very, very small operation to a big operation overnight. There's no leeway for being a middle operation. Yep. So you have a lot of people who are working in content who are just simply, once they hit that threshold, they just stop taking any kind of money from social media or stop doing any kind of work with social media until the new year resets, because they can't afford to. Because if they don't go from 9,000 to 20,000 overnight, it's going to absolutely financially destroy them.
Yeah, if you go from 9 grand to 9.5, it literally takes you back to what, 7?
Something. I mean, it's a huge cost. And then you have to pay this monthly, you know, insurances and stuff like that. And I'm never one to argue against taxation in the sense that I do believe that taxation
it's responsible.
If it's going the right,
if it's going to the right areas, I'm fully happy to pay the taxes that I pay to, and I am a taxpayer. I want to make that fully clear to anybody watching this who thinks I'm some immigrant who's not. Unlike Donald Trump, I will release my taxes.
Full circle.
We've gone full circle. But I have no problem paying these things. I have no problem doing this. But it has, in the past 7 years, reached a point that feels much more strenuous than it did 7 years ago. It feels much more painful than it did 7 years ago. It feels like nothing goes as far as it did 7 years ago.
It's
true. And it's like, especially with the social media, even when I started earning money on social media maybe 3 years ago.
Right.
And even then, it was never even something I thought about. I was just kind of like, yeah, if I owe some extra tax here and there, it's fine. I can pay it. It's not a big deal. But now it's like, you start coming down to the dollars and cents pardon the American term, the euros and cents when you're thinking about, if I even think about taking this one tiny little 150 euro deal for a story on my Instagram, it's going to ruin me for the rest of the year because of the taxes and the fine and the YEL insurances and all this stuff. So it's like, you reach a certain point where, like, once you hit that threshold, you're almost discouraged from ever becoming bigger as an enterprise. You see it very heavily in, for example, like, I'm not an expert, but in like the liquor industry or the small brewing companies, you have companies like Fat Lizard or Punikin Brewing Company or whatever. I'm throwing out numbers that aren't exact numbers. I'm not an expert, but let's say the government says if you do anything less than 5,000 liters of beer, you're a microbrewery, and this is how we're going to tax you. But if you do 5,001 to 50,000, you're considered a macro brewery.
Right.
So, and you're going to be taxed on this percentage. So it's like, if you're going to go from 5,000 to 5,000 or to 6,000, you might as well just go straight to 50,000.
Right.
But you can't guarantee that you're going to sell that extra 45,000 liters of beer.
It's not.
But you're still going to pay
incremental at all.
you're still going to pay that level of tax as someone who would. So you might end up with just insane amounts of inventory that you can't sell that you're paying taxes on because you're just, it's this like kind of huge dissonance between that. It's the same thing with content creators. It's like, if you're going to go over this $9,000 threshold of earning money from social media or from your freelance work, doing gig work on social media, you might as well not earn anything at all over that, because now you're going to be, or you better scale. You better go big. You see it a lot in like these small companies, small restaurants or small whatever in Finland. It's like they go from having one location to 5 out of nowhere.
Right.
And you think, why do you do this? It's because they have to. The system is set up where there's nothing for the middleman, the medium-sized company. There's nothing for that. It's either you're a micro, small, tiny little operation, or you're a mega conglomerate. There's no room for anything in between.
2 locations. 2 locations is bullshit. You're losing money at that point. If you either have 1 or you have 6 in 6 different cities.
Yeah. And also think like it's an interesting discussion, because like people here are primed to, you know, have the safety net of the welfare state, right? Like people, there are tons of people that are, you have people complain that they don't get enough and whatever, but like there are some people for years who've been able to live off some social security or that sort of stuff. I know that's a huge contention right now. I don't even know if I can say this, but I was given an opportunity to basically make a video about about foreigners being able to how the government helps them with money and that sort of stuff. And
I was offered a similar opportunity.
Really? Yeah. And then
you were. Yeah, you were.
And then I remember being like, okay, I'll make the video. But I remember thinking I'm going to get a lot of backlash for it, simply because it's like, oh, so you're a foreigner just coming here to get some money from us or whatever. But they ended up canceling because they were like, because of political chess pieces being moved.
I can talk to you about that off camera. I was very involved in that also. Yeah.
Oh, really? Were you? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember being like, oh shit. There's a lot happening behind the scenes when it comes to that. So now I haven't spent a lot of time kind of researching this, but it's obviously Finland has gotten itself in a weird situation because it's got an aging population. Part of the population also perhaps has a more negative view of immigrants, more like I'd say
a very nice way to put that.
Humanitarian immigrants. Like there is a lot of contention with that, and it's spilling over into just immigrants in general.
Yeah.
But yet, and in Finland, the message it puts out into the world kind of like, hey, if you're here for 3 months and you don't have if you lose your job and in 3 months you don't get a new one, you kind of leave, and that affects the branding of the country, right? The way
It's not an enticing destination for foreign talent anymore.
Yeah,
I think that's a big issue. Is that, and this is not me endorsing any candidate in any way, but one of the biggest things that Kokomos had platformed on, and they controlled the presidency, they controlled the parliament. For now, elections are coming up soon. But they had always talked about lowering taxation, including increasing individual freedoms by lowering taxation, and also reducing the level or making it more difficult to immigrate here under the guise that it would bring in more qualified immigrants.
Yeah.
But that's not how it works, right?
No,
if I'm a doctor, I have a doctorate from, let's say, who cares, from USA. I have a doctorate from USA, and I'm thinking, you know what? I'm tired of making millions. Well, no, I'm just joking. But I want to go to Finland. Because I like it there. But if I look at the potential way it could go wrong, when they say, all right, let's say your hospital lays you off. If I don't find a new job within 3 months, I am now deported from the country. My visa's canceled and I'm out of here. Or, if I don't, all of these kind of hoops to jump through, I'm thinking, well, why don't I just move to Germany or Switzerland? It's a little bit easier for me to do that.
Of course.
So maybe I am the type of immigrant that Kokomos wants to move here, but I'm not going to jump through those fucking hoops because I'm thinking, why should I? I can go somewhere else that's going to welcome me through open arms. So you're not going, you're actively discouraging any kind of high quality, whatever the terminology or the buzzwords they want to use. You're actively discouraging those people from wanting to be here. And it's like you're making it harder to be here. So on one hand, you're saying, okay, yeah, now the undesirables, the people we don't want, can't come here, but the people we do can't either.
Yeah.
Or won't. Maybe it's not that they can't, it's that they won't.
Yeah, so we have an aging population. We also want to move towards discouraging more immigrants from moving here. We want a more educated populace. We know that people are coming here to go to school for free and get a very good education and then leaving the country. Why aren't we being more open?
Yeah.
Well, the biggest thing with the education thing is
because we don't like brown people. Like that's their whole argument is there's a party and a person that I want to say, but we don't like brown people, and they've been noted as saying this for a long time.
I'm actually going to try and get one of the guys in the current government for conversation at some point. Hopefully, I'll be able to do that. But it is kind of intriguing to me that, the argument about lowering asylum seekers, the amount of asylum seekers, or trying to better integrate people, I can understand some of those arguments just simply by being like, yeah, okay, I kind of understand in certain way. But what I don't understand is putting policies that actively discourage people who would benefit the country. The way I kind of like to think about it is that a Finnish person who's born here, right? The state has to pay for their education, has to pay for, welfare, whatever, healthcare, all this sort of stuff. But if a professional comes from a different country, Finland didn't have to pay for them to be educated, didn't have to pay for them to get the skills that they have, whatever. You could, in fact, get people here, hook them up with a place to stay, make sure they feel comfortable and welcome, and they can get straight into work and start paying taxes, as opposed to someone who grew up here. They only really start making money like
maybe 18 years in.
Like usually in your 20s, early 20s, that's when people start kind of earning a little bit more money. And I'm just like, it seems to me that you can still promote Finnish values, Finnish language learning, and all this sort of stuff for immigrants who are coming here, educated immigrants, kind of make them feel welcome, help them fall in love with the culture and that sort of stuff. But in my reading, it seems like the more left-wing people call anyone who points out some of these issues as simply racist, and I think that just it, that just kind of cuts the conversation in half because you can't have
Yes.
a nuanced discussion.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
then the right wing take that and they run with it. And then the more if someone is racist there,
Yeah.
you've given them a ton of fuel because you haven't dealt with some of these issues, which should be like an easy W for left-wing people. Like you can be all lefty and whatever and
Yeah.
still
I
I fall
think
into that trap, obviously, and
Yeah.
often. Yeah.
yeah, and I understand why, right? But
it's
it's just,
easy
yeah.
to be like make it black and white, but it's so much more than black and white, and
But
I
I-
do understand that. It's just makes
Yeah.
it easier to digest, I guess.
Honestly,
Yeah.
I think
Concepts,
honestly,
I don't
if I'm
know.
being brutally honest here, again, this is another hot take, but
I
I
love
think
them hot
it
takes.
comes back to the whole what's the saying? The blood of the covenant is thicker than water of something. But honestly, I think if a lot of people in the Finnish government didn't have to pay these welfare things to Finnish citizens, they wouldn't do it either. But I think it comes down to, let's put it as an analogy of, Keith I've known for 16 years. He's my brother. We're not blood related, but he's my brother. My family considers him family as well.
Yeah.
But let's say that my family was slightly different mentality and Keith comes out to dinner with us. Keith's a great guy. He's not a criminal. He does wonderful things. And they say, all right, we're going to pay for Josh's
That you
meal
know of.
because we have to. He's my son.
Mm.
But we're not going to pay for Keith. Even though Keith's great, he's been great for the family. He's always helped out the family whenever needed. He's always, helped us move when we need to move. He's, cleaned up after himself whatever. But let's say their mindset was, well, we have to pay for Josh because he's our blood, but we don't have to pay for him at all under any circumstances.
Mm.
And I think that mindset comes into, unfortunately, a lot of people in the government where they think paying for our Finnish citizens is not something that we do because we want to. It's something we do because we are obligated to do so.
They were born
And if
on this
there was,
dirt, so
if there was something that we could do to change that, we absolutely would in a heartbeat, but we can't. So we have to deal with it. Paying for these people is a necessary expense of existing, but we absolutely don't have to do that for him.
Mm.
And so they won't
Mm.
because they don't feel any moral or emotional obligation to do so.
Mm.
So it's
Yeah.
like it has nothing to do with whether that person is good enough or is qualified enough or is a benefit to the society. It's because we don't think we have to, we won't.
Yeah.
They don't see the further benefit. They don't see that this person is going to come in here, have children who will be future taxpayers, benefit by their own tax paying here, help to develop their industry, help to bring new outside perspective to their industry and to grow their field. They don't care about any of that.
Mm.
You're not from this soil. And I'm not making blatant statements about all Finns. I'm talking about a very small demographic of people.
Yeah.
But it permeates the idea of what a lot of these people are thinking about is that this person's not my blood relative, so
Mm.
I don't need to do anything for them
Right.
because they're not from here.
even
Yeah.
though they've given their life. Maybe they've
Yes.
been here for 2 years. They've given their entire life in this country, given back, done what they were supposed to do. They don't deserve what we deserve because of the dirt that we were born on.
Now, to
Yeah.
be fair, I want to make it very clear. This is an issue that exists in almost every country.
Every country,
It's
of
not
course,
it's not
yeah.
a Finland exclusive
No, it's
concept.
not.
This is
No.
something
Yeah.
you will find
As
in
is very
you'll find
clear
in USA, you'll find it in
yeah.
Sweden, you'll find it in Germany, you'll find it in
Yeah.
almost anywhere I can think of that I
Yeah.
know of, you will find it in a lot of these places.
And you
that-
know what? This will probably get me in trouble. But I think when it comes to immigration, one thing I've personally noticed from not just in Finland, but in Sweden and Norway and some of these other places, it isn't necessarily because the people are brown. What I've noticed, I feel like what a lot of people have issues with is countries that have an Islamic way of doing things. Like, for example, when I take the metro, I see a lot more women wearing the
Hijabs.
hijabs and all that sort of stuff, right? And of course, there's a space for saying, culture and whatever. But the truth of the matter is that Islam is more than just culture. It's culture plus religion plus the idea that, you kind of
Plus,
Yeah, it's what it's something that's supposed to grow and expand and all that sort of stuff.
sure.
And the like the way women are viewed and all that sort of stuff, it's very opposite to what Western countries, how they view things, right? Like here in Finland, it's all about freedom, like woman,
Equality,
equality
Sure.
and whatever.
of course.
And then from some of these other places, there's a very different way of viewing things. Like I think, I'm not sure what city it was in, but they did the no dance, the no square dance or whatever.
Oh my God, that's something
oh.
we've known. You want to do it together? Stop!
Stop.
Don't touch me there. This is my no square.
Yeah, and I mean,
We learned that as kids.
I mean,
Christians, baby.
What's up?
Not anymore.
Oh my
And I
God!
guess
Please
someone-
don't clip that and put that as a.
and I'm sure someone will fact check me, but if I'm not mistaken, there was a rise in sexual abuse and stuff like that, especially amongst the immigrant
I think
population.
this was. I believe this
Oh,
was
it's
in
almost
Sweden.
as if oppression leads to these kind of things.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what I've personally noticed. It's not. It's just that's where I find a lot of the contention, not just here, like also in Sweden, in Norway, and like I find that a lot of people are like, yay, immigrants, but hey, yo, like for example, Yle started a new show where they wanted to start speaking Arabic in like just fully Arabic show. And you've got super left-wing people who are like, yeah, this is great. This is fantastic. And then you've got other people who are like, wait,
Why?
what does this imply? Like, what is happening? Like, what?
Yeah.
And I think that's where
As far as the spread goes. Okay. Like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the rhetoric behind it is that because Yle is a nationally taxpayer funded
yeah, exactly.
news service, the idea is, your taxpayer money is now going to fund actively creating Arabic content.
yeah.
And the pushback from that might be from a certain demographic of people who are thinking, well, now where it comes from that idea of more for you means less for me. Right. So
Yeah.
the idea is that if you take a slice of the pie, that means there's less pie for me. So the idea, I think, comes often that if we make more content that is in Arabic or even English or Russian or other languages that would be popular in Finland, it means less funding and less pie for the native Finnish speakers. And
Yeah.
I don't agree with that sentiment, but I think that is the sentiment. Is that
Yeah,
it means
yeah.
that there is less of the pie for the native Finns to
It's
take
the fear.
when there is more given to people who are not.
right.
Yeah, it's the
from
fear.
here.
It's the fear of losing culture. Of course, I mean,
Yeah.
everyone
think
has
that's a valid
fear of
fear?
losing culture. A valid fear. Well, I mean, obviously, if someone has a feeling that way, it's definitely valid because if you are giving more time to even English speakers, say English speakers, which is very common, everyone speaks English. I'm not saying everyone, but it's such a generalized language that most of the planet speaks or understands English.
Yeah.
It's definitely valid, but if you hang on to the cultural parts that matter the most about like a certain country, Finland, whatever, any Nordic country, and allow others to also embrace that and understand it through their language, I don't think you're losing your culture. I think you're appreciating the heart of it while accepting others into it.
Yeah.
Now, I do understand, and we talked about this in the last podcast, that I if you haven't seen it already, go watch the last podcast.
Yes.
Hot shit.
But if we talk about what we talked about in the last podcast of the idea of the fear of, let's say, Finnish as a language being lost, the fear that, it's going to be a dying language. It's going to go the way of Welsh or, these other languages or Native American languages that are struggling to rebuild, through colonization or through globalization or through whatever it may be. And I think a lot of these people are wrongfully putting the blame on languages like Arabic or Russian, because the fact of the matter is if you're so worried about immigrants taking your Finnish culture, why is it that when I walk down the streets of Helsinki, I hear Gen Z and Gen A speaking Finglish, not Farabic?
True.
Yeah.
They're speaking
No.
Finglish. I hear
Yeah.
these,
Children.
between 10 and 18 years old kids speaking in every third word I hear, they say is an English word. And these are
Yeah.
kids who are born and raised here, who are ethnically Finnish. Their Finnish line goes back 1,000 years. They're the most Finnish people you could possibly find, and they're speaking Finglish.
Yeah.
And it's not exactly like there's a huge epidemic of Americans and British and Irish and South African and whatever
Yeah.
people invading the country.
Yeah.
It's I understand the concept of English music being popular, English cinema being popular, English, whatever being popular in the whole world. But it's like, if you want to point the finger and be so afraid that Arabic is going to take something from Finnish media, well, I'm sorry, but your kids are already speaking Finglish.
No,
they're already
it's true.
speaking English to each other more than they're speaking Finnish to each other, or almost as much. I've seen entire groups of Finnish teenagers speaking English because they think it's cool.
What do
They
you
all
no.
speak Finnish, but they're not doing it. They're choosing not to. That's
yeah.
their,
What are you
Yeah.
going to
something
do
like-
also? Are you going to stop them from speaking this language? Like,
Yeah, I think mostly if I kind of take the temperature, right? I think the fear is that of the culture it might entice to grow here,
Mhm.
like in terms of when you look at Sweden, for example, and the gang epidemic happening there,
Mhm.
like
because they're putting people of other ethnicities into certain regions of a city.
Yeah, I think
They're
it's
doing it poorly.
I think it's a mixture of terrible mismanagement, like
Yeah.
not actually trying to integrate people well.
Yeah.
And I think that's the issue. People are like, how are we helping people integrate if we're giving them a way to like?
Not
I think
even
people
interact with us.
I think people kind
Yeah.
of give a little pass to English because it is a language that you need to know to be able to do business abroad.
Yeah.
But something like Arabic, I think some people are like, wait, what is the thing that you're trying to push? And lastly, I also think that America is incredible for several reasons, but one of them is the fact that
If you like
Once-
it so much, why don't you marry it? I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
no, but I think America is one of the places where if you go there from when you're a kid and then you grow and you start a business, whatever, you become American through and through. Like you're an American now, right? It's this melting pot of different cultures and whatever. It's supposed, at least the idea of it, you're supposed to be tied together by the love for the country and that sort of stuff. Whereas in Europe, there is so much culture attached to the foundations of each country here in Europe. Like I can go to Italy from a young kid. I can call myself Italian or whatever, and there's arguments around that. But you check my blood and whatever. You're not really
From Italy. Yeah.
Italy, right? And so there's certain aspects of that people kind of hold very near and dear.
Yeah.
And I think that's why this is the first time Europe has opened itself up to immigration as much as it has.
Yeah.
And I think there's such a huge right-wing leaning all over European countries right
The
now.
world right now.
Yeah, the world right now. But I kind of saw the wave really strongly in Europe.
Yeah.
And it's like, because culture, I guess, means a lot more to Europeans in certain aspects.
Yeah, you would think so, but also in America, you see even if there's say you have a down the line Mexican mother, she's 2 generations removed from ever even living in Mexico or being there, and she's opened a business, she'll still be, by some racist assholes in America, be told to go back to her home country because she's not American, because they're white. White, for some reason, is American, and anything else is not. Which is crazy.
I think that is
it's a different perspective living there. Living there, everything is so much more racially divided as opposed to
Culturally divided.
nationally or culturally divided.
Well, yeah,
It's a little different for us because we are a melting pot and we're such a young country compared to everywhere else in Europe.
Yeah.
Or everywhere in Europe. We're not in Europe, but that we divide the line on, like, it used to be Dutch were Americans, Dutch descendants were Americans, Irish were the N-words of America, and then we brought black people over, and then they were the N-words.
We took over.
Oh yeah, we just happened to bring them over
Well, I
on
think
cruise ships.
I think that's an
to
your-
but no,
yeah.
every wave of like new immigrants, there's you're not American. Even African Americans have the qualifier of African in front of their name because they're not white Americans. They're not Dutch Americans or whatever.
Yeah,
from the 1800s.
totally. Yeah.
So it's a little different for us being here. If you're Finnish, you're Finnish. If you're Finnish and Swedish, then you're Finnish Swede. Then it's everything is like split into these like groups. But there, it's either you're, 4 generations American or you're not American.
Well, I think even amongst those subcultures in the States, when you look historically, a lot of those cultures have had to earn their whiteness, which has become synonymous with being
Yeah.
American, right?
Ugh.
You have, the Italians, the Greeks, the Irish even, that were not considered white until a certain point in history or until they had earned their whiteness. When you go back far enough in the state history, Europeans will look at Greeks and be like, yeah, they're white. They'll look at Italians and be like, yeah, they're white. They'll look at Irish and be like, yeah, they're white. In the States, it wasn't always that way. The Greeks were basically treated as Arabs.
Yeah.
The Italians were basically treated the same way.
North
They were all
Africans,
kind of
yeah.
thought North African or Arab, North African. They would have been lumped in with Egyptians or Algerians or Tunisians or things like that. And, when you look at, the Irish was just fucking weird. I think that was mostly just coming from oppression from the English. But even the Irish weren't considered white. They weren't given that kind of respect of whatever. And I think that attachment that a lot of American society has to whiteness, and this is rich coming from you, but it also
Yes,
attaches
let's have a
itself
conversation on race.
to what the American people have deemed as appropriate to be white.
Yeah.
And nowadays, you are seeing a lot more Latin cultures being considered more white recently now than they used to be because of, whatever, becoming more prevalent in the society or whatever. They're still in many communities heavily looked upon, but in other communities, they're just seen as white.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I totally,
And it's like-
totally get what you're saying. I do like a few little, just to throw in the spanner for the fun of it.
Sure,
because
of
I
course.
like it. Is number one, I feel like in America, sure, there are some racist people or whatever the case is.
There's a
But,
few.
but there seems to be more of an acceptance in general in terms of like when you look at celebrities who come from different bloodlines or
Yeah.
whatever the case is, and it's also, I don't think it's not just right wing people who are starting to play with identity politics and blah blah. The left wing, the super left wing as well,
Yeah.
have started to play the same games.
Yeah.
And I think that's what pisses some people off. Is like, for example, in certain universities in America, you've got all black dorms, right?
Which is crazy.
Right? And
We're not
but-
segregating, but we're positively segregating.
Right.
Like, what the fuck is that? Yeah.
And then you've got that sort of stuff. Like one of Kamala Harris's biggest running themes was the fact that she's like all these different skin colors and whatever.
Sure.
But it's like, if you just come, I don't know what you guys think about him or whatever, but look at Vivek Ramaswamy, for example. He's an Indian guy. He ran for president. He was loved by the right, and even some.
He's also on one of Trump's committees, right? With
Yeah,
Elon Musk,
he's part of the
government efficiency program.
Yeah,
whatever that means.
But
the Elon Musk Club.
yeah, you had some people who were very, what you would call right wing, being like, man, this is what it means to be American.
Mhm.
So, and also when you look at the elections, you had a lot of Latino people who voted against Kamala Harris, not because they weren't thinking of themselves as like, hey, I'm a Latin person.
Latina,
They were like,
yeah.
I'm American, and fuck the illegal immigration.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
you know.
yeah.
So I think there is a little bit more of a, yes, sure, there's racism or whatever, but I feel like America, there's still the sense of you become American. Like
Yeah.
you know, where it's a bit different here.
Yeah, there's no becoming finished.
Yeah,
We're not gonna
yeah.
become
Well,
finished.
No, yeah,
You
that is a
become
good point.
finished.
That is a good point. I like, you know, for example, you know, when I hopefully have kids in Finland, my kids might be Finnish, but I never will be. I never will be.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, even though they're half American, they would be probably considered Finnish because they
Yeah.
would look Finnish,
Yeah.
skin color wise, and you know, whatever. But they, you know, they would grow up speaking Finnish, so they would be considered Finnish. But I, no matter how long I live here, will never be ever
Yeah.
Finnish. I never will.
Absolutely
Be.
no.
It
Yeah.
will never happen for me. Now, if I looked like you, that gap might even grow wider.
Yeah.
Let's say you marry a white Finnish woman and you have kids. Your kids are obviously going to be mixed race. It
My
might
girlfriend's
take
probably listening to you right now.
it might take 2 or 3 generations before Finnish people consider
Yeah.
your kids to be Finnish. Not 2 or 3, not that many, but you see what I'm saying. You
Yeah.
know,
No. I
you know,
completely get what you're saying. Yeah.
It is an interesting understanding of how these things evolve because
Mm,
again, me and Keith, no matter what we look like, we will never be Finnish.
Yeah.
of course.
I can get the Finnish passport. I can become fluent in the language. I
Can you?
if I do someday, whatever. Shut the fuck up, Mr. Duolingo over there, dude. Tell me how to
54 days straight, baby.
Yeah. Tell me how to conjugate a verb,
you're right,
motherfucker.
Conjugate my dick. How about that?
How would you conjugate these
No, but
balls?
but I totally that was my only pushback in that sense.
I understand
that's
what you're
why-
saying,
That's
yeah,
why
yeah.
I think Europe maybe has a lot more of a visceral reaction to, you know, seeing women wearing hijabs and all that sort of stuff, because it's just in America, that's fine.
Yeah.
You're American. It's all right. Here it's kind of like,
But no, a woman wearing a hijab in America, unless you're in a very liberal place, you're not American. They will not refer to you as
Well,
American.
that's a very
100%.
it's a very niche example because of the PTSD that Americans have from 9/11.
oh yeah, true. Yeah.
I think if we're talking about other
that was a
cultures,
bad
I mean,
example. Yeah, they've got, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I
it
think
does,
if we're
it does
talking
take a
about
lot of time. Like, say in the UK, I was just thinking in the UK, you hear a British voice, you think a British person, but a lot of black people now have very British accents and have been there for many generations. So it's not like a looks thing, even or people with hijabs or Arabic people that come there and they have a British accent and they're considered British.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
you look at an Idris Elba, like it's been so long since they were brought there for the wrong reasons
Mhm.
that now they're considered British.
Well, here's the hot topic: is Elon Musk South African?
He is.
He is, right?
He is South African.
I'm joking
and
about the
also-
ethnicity-
also
the
from
ethnicity
Mars.
versus-
He's also from Mars, right?
Listen, come on, guys. That was a brilliant joke,
Hey.
and you didn't give me the feedback.
Hey, listen, guys.
I need my ego fed. Okay.
The funny thing about Elon Musk is that whatever I just find this quite interesting is like Elon Musk used to be pretty left wing in general.
Yeah,
Yeah,
until it
he
wasn't
really
beneficial to be anymore.
Oh, well, they came against them, like the Democrats started really coming against him because
of
he
his
wasn't.
money?
Because he wasn't exactly agreeing with everything. Like during COVID, I think he was more kind of like, "Hey, keep the old people in, let the young people out to go out and work and whatever." And remember, it was very taboo to say anything like that during that time. Whether it was like, I don't know, but anyway. And then ever since then, he's the guy who did the whole electric car thing to save the planet and to fucking reusable rockets so that the Earth can get better. Like super kind of liberal sort of
Yeah.
save the planet, kumbaya
Very
sort of
green,
vibes,
yeah.
right? But oh yeah, what I was gonna say is my brother. He's been living in America for what, like 10 or two of my brothers.
Mm.
They so easily, it flows off their tongue when they say they're American.
Mm-hmm.
It's so
Oh.
you wouldn't catch me saying that about being Finnish.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
even in 20 years, I don't think I'll say I'm Finnish. Like,
Nah, I'm still American at that point.
like you know,
I see. When you put it that way, I see what you mean.
yeah.
Yeah.
Where in USA are they?
So I've got one in New York.
I'm gonna.
Yeah.
Well, one brother in New York, and then the other in Dallas, Texas. So one of them was really happy about Trump, and the other was not.
Okay. Good, just because of their surroundings, I guess. Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like where about in the U.S. did you say you lived again?
I'm from Indiana.
Indiana.
I was born in Arizona, in like the Southwest.
Yeah.
Raised mostly in Indiana, and then in the military, I moved around. So I'm back to Arizona in the military.
You were part of the military?
Yeah. I was a weather forecaster for the Air Force.
Oh, how does that work?
So you have to test for most of your jobs in the Air Force, especially. But I tested 1 point below the highest percentile job, which was linguist. So because of that, I got weather forecasting, and
Right.
I went to 9 months of school and learned how to forecast the weather.
So you never went into any like I'm not, so who do you forecast for? Is it
When I was forecasting for the western side of CONUS, so that's everything from like the middle of USA west, in the USA. And then if you get deployed, you're forecasting for the Middle East, of course.
Oh,
when you're
and you
deployed
were
there.
never deployed.
No, I was never deployed. I was just,
Really?
I was just in Arizona forecasting for like 6 or 9 bases throughout the US, forecasting their weather for, flight plans and things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And just out of curiosity, would you ever see yourself moving back to the States? Ever?
It's difficult. I am very, very torn. Of course, on the base level.
Is that one dead? Oh, it's fine. That one, I put that one specifically to get all of us.
There's a base level, of course.
Yep.
Like jobs are easier. Getting a job is easier. Making more money is much easier. Being taxed less is much easier. But there's also, I have to bring my wife there, and if women's rights are going to be infringed upon so much.
Hey, we
I
came
don't-
full circle.
Yeah. We can full
I don't
circle.
want to bring her back there and force her to live in that society
Yeah.
when she's not respected as much as she can be here. Because here, I mean, as much as people will argue that women are not being respected here, as I've seen, it's so much more equal than anywhere else I've seen.
Yeah.
Everything is so much more equal. There's also, I don't agree with the politics of the place that I am from, Indiana specifically, like the state I'm from. I would probably never move permanently back there.
Right.
It's very conflicting in my mind. I would, above all of this, I'd rather just stay in Finland. I
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
Finland, and I love living here. I love my family and my friends that I've made here,
Mm.
and the social system that's here. But
Yeah.
if I had to think about moving back home, those are the thoughts that I would have. It would be
Yeah.
difficult.
And I guess lastly, what are you guys kind of up to? What's life here kind of
Oh, the fun bit! Yay!
calling?
Hey.
What's going
calling
on,
to
Josh?
Give a shout
to
out.
just-
Well,
to
I have a
just put a
special on
nice bow.
Netflix. Go see it. It's called. No.
Fat rascal.
Hey, listen, I would watch it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, not much. Just trying to focus on, new styles of content and continuing to push what I do online and offer interesting perspectives. I'm also working more closely with the city of Tampere in certain aspects and kind of trying
Cool.
to expand the city itself as a more international and enticing location for people to move to and to study at and
Great.
and to work in. I've had the opportunity to work with some people within the local government,
Amazing.
to help bring that voice to those people. And so that's, kind of something that I'm doing aside from content, is kind of using my platform or using my voice to work with people who can actually affect change.
That's amazing.
so-
That's really cool. Helsinki doesn't give a shit about me. And
You
what
need
about
the right manager?
Yeah. Well, what about you, man? Like, what's the?
Not a lot new going on, I guess. Just working, trying to spend some time with family over the holidays. Helping out with Josh's, enterprise.
Manager
moving things
Keith.
forward that way.
Can you put that on the bottom of the episode, Manager Keith?
Manager Keith. At
Actually, can you put him as
Jake
Kevin, the bass
W
player?
Management
No one's
at
gonna know what
Gmail.
I'm saying, but it's hilarious.
No, but really just trying to get integrated as much as possible.
Yeah.
Get comfortable with being here. No, nothing crazy new, but just loving life.
Fantastic.
What about you? What do you got going on?
So I'm not. I feel like I'm juggling a bunch of different things.
Mm-hmm.
You know how
Obviously,
to juggle?
I was actually learning how to actually juggle for a little bit, but right now I think I want to focus a little bit more on the podcasting side of things. I'm really keen to start chatting to a lot more people, and to expand, I want to go a lot more international as well. To start chatting to people abroad. Obviously, I find politics really interesting and stuff. That's on one hand, and I also do fun content about Finland and stuff, which is really cool. And I've just been learning to take that a lot more lightly and just do it because I find something interesting, and whatever the case is.
Sure.
And then writing, trying to write a little bit more, whether it's to do with stuff with politics or just things that I'm thinking about.
Okay.
And then there's music, because I'm a musician.
Yeah.
I've got like 2 songs that I finished recording that I'm planning on the release process and that sort of stuff. So
Nice.
I'm not really quite sure exactly.
Sing it for us right now.
No way. So yeah,
Excellent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent.
that's about it. But I really appreciate you guys coming all the way from Tampere.
Yeah, we
It's
did
not a
make
big
a.
trip.
Yeah, it was a lot. I
He
mean,
comes down here for his fucking girlfriend, stealing him away from me all the time.
doesn't even live in the city. I just come down here.
That's
No,
amazing.
but dude, it was really nice to see you again. I
Yeah.
love it. Yeah.
And next
Always
time,
great to see
I'll for the next one, like, we'll kind of ping pong it. For the next one, I'll come to Tampere again. But
Let's just be
Yeah.
next summer. Let's just be in the middle of a lake on like a big floaty. All of us.
yeah.
on
It's
It's
big
kind of like a
floaty.
reverse Oreo.
it took me a
I
second.
think you enjoyed that more than anyone else.
I'm hilarious. You guys.
No, but let's do something again. Yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
great. And
Yeah.
let's do, if you want to do some more fun with your videos, let's do a
Yeah,
little-
you know what? I
yeah.
definitely
Incoming.
want to come to Tampere and spend a day or 2 there, and
Dude,
then
please.
we can just mess around. I actually want to come through and do like a YouTube video about Tampere, so I might need some guides as to what's happening. But
we know what's going on in the city.
yeah.
We know
But
what's up.
guys,
Brother.
it was amazing.
Thank you so much.
Very
Until
cool.
next
Yeah.
time, ciao. Oh, is that one?
This one?